Hello, dearest friends, and welcome to my third reflection on what we can learn from the profound distress due to the coronavirus pandemic. In the previous episode, I tried to describe some of the most serious perils we face when we are separated from others for an extended period of time. I also talked about various ways in which we try to compensate for this predicament, and I found that a vast majority of these compensations are external and practical in nature. My suggestion has been that such solutions, although they may and do bring a certain relief from our troubles and uncertainties, are not as efficient in the long run, especially from a psychological or emotional standpoint. Here and in other future videos, I will propose various perspectives from which you could view the present crisis as a means to grow existentially or psychologically. My overall hope is that by choosing to take note of these ideas or even to incorporate them into your life, you will be able to better cope with the surrounding mayhem. At the same time, I should add that not absolutely everything I have to say will be pleasant or easy to digest. Some of my recommendations will be unambiguously comforting. Others, however, may appear, at least at first sight, worrisome. Moreover, none of them will yield immediate results, flatter one's ego, or guarantee instant gratifications. Still, their constructive quality stems, in my view, from their necessity to any existential or spiritual progress. Thus, they are all offered with a very optimistic and empathetic spirit in mind.
If you're unhappy about the occasional disturbance, I urge you to ask yourself, how many wonderful, that is to say, difficult and praiseworthy things you learned without long, relentless efforts, constant failures, bitter disappointments, and repeated temptations to give up? Same in the present context. The psychological means to overcome the unprecedented crisis we find ourselves in cannot always be cozy and uncomplicated, especially if they are to be psychologically fruitful and have long-lasting effects. After all, we are all very complex beings, which explains why the solutions to our serious traumas won't be as easy as getting rid of a headache with an over-the-counter painkiller. Nevertheless, I don't doubt for a second that at the end of this steep path, you will emerge not just more honest and self-confident, but also quite amazed as to how many marvels your inwardness holds in store. Similarly to the Roman philosopher king Marcus Aurelius, I believe that it's time you realized that you have something in you more powerful and miraculous than the things that affect you and make you dance like a puppet. Today, my intention is to explain why, in gloomy times like ours, we are vividly reminded of our vulnerability. By vulnerability, I mean our unavoidable susceptibility to physical illness. Here, I would like to begin with the reminder that nothing comes more natural to us than to shrink from agonizing physical pain, especially the kind of pain that leads to bodily degradation, permanent damage, or a slow death. From time immemorial, we have constantly trembled at the thought of falling prey to maiming or lethal diseases. People everywhere have dreaded infectious afflictions like the plague, gout, syphilis, and tuberculosis. Our time is no different, and the most ruthless viral killers of the 20th and 21st centuries seem to have been so far influenza, Ebola, smallpox, HIV, and now coronavirus. Given this visceral rejection of suffering, when confronted with a pandemic of gigantic proportions, the most immediate and common reaction is fear. I'm talking about the raw, instinctive, uncontrollable horror of getting contaminated. At a cultural level, this elementary horror can be seen in the countless movies that portray contagion-triggered apocalypses and thereby reveal one of the darkest spots in our collective unconscious. In real life, though, such fear can take over not just individuals, but also entire countries, as the radical draconian measures taken by the governments around the world testify. So, when we are assailed by the possibility of viral infection, every single one of us becomes instantly and painfully aware of our proneness to sickness. In these moments, no matter how healthy, wealthy, young or beautiful we may be, we feel the specter of disease breathing down our own necks, menacing our personal existence. Moreover, even if we don't get sick, we still are not completely out of danger. As I tried to explain in the previous episode, isolation can take a huge toll on our mental health and emotional well-being. And if that wasn't enough, the social environment makes things much worse, as it treats everybody with a preemptive rejection. That's because during pandemics, everyone looks at everyone else as a potential carrier of the virus, as an angel of death in disguise. This exposure to rejection is something which even our bodies might fail to handle. Scientific research has proved that it can do serious damage to our immune system, reduce our cardiovascular health, and in some cases, hasten death. Psychologically speaking, our predicament is even deeper. As some of you may know, when getting seriously ill, we tend to concentrate only on our pain, our discomfort, and various frustrations for not being able to function properly. If this goes on for much longer, we become detached from life. We feel as it were shipwrecked from the mainstream of existence, condemned to helpless passivity, completely abandoned. In this scenario, sickness forces us to call into question everything we believed about our own worth, as it causes us to lose faith in our significance. And once it voids our soul of all meaning, sickness condemns us to go through life as mere ghosts of our former selves. So yes, a viral illness can have horrendous consequences which go beyond physical affliction. To be sure, it is not my intention to minimize any of them. And yet things don't need to be unambiguously tragic. It lies within our power to at least try to distill from the bad experience of possible or actual illness a few positive outcomes. For even in the middle of the coronavirus crisis, there's room for reactions other than instinctive fear, dejection, and paranoid suspicion. You certainly remember that the way an oyster, mussel, or clam fights a parasite which penetrated its system is to coat the intruder with layers upon layers of a neutralizing fluid. The end result of this process is a gorgeous, lustrous pearl. The pearl I am alluding to here also has its origin in something hurtful or dangerous, specifically the encounter with a foreign body, a virus. However, as any other pearl out there, ours too possesses several brilliant facets. To begin with, if seen in the appropriate light, our inner pearl can reflect the current pandemic as an occasion for self-knowledge. What do I mean by that? The Roman philosopher and politician Seneca once said, "I judge you unfortunate because you have never lived through misfortune. You have passed through life without an opponent. No one can ever know what you're capable of, not even you. Why not take this opportunity to find out who you are or what you have become? Why wouldn't you honestly recognize your fear, but also that it's justified? Furthermore, why wouldn't you discover the possibility that your stress and inner turmoil might make you react irrationally, blowing the threat out of proportion? For isn't it true that, to quote Seneca again, we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality? Next, why wouldn't you tell yourself that none of this is your fault, and that the only thing you're responsible for is how you act and react in such difficult circumstances? Here, you may want to consider the majestic observation of the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Or, if you think that only kings can behave this way, you could heed a Roman slave by the name of Epictetus, who, when asked where good and evil reside, has answered, "Not in uncontrollable externals, but within myself, through the choices that are my own." One such choice is, for instance, an increased self-control. Concretely, we can fight our current fears with the awareness that we may never get sick. If experts are right, there's a real and very high possibility that most of us will be left unscathed at the end of this dark journey. We may never come into contact with the virus, or even if we did, our immune system may be perfectly capable of fighting it off. In a previous well-being video, I spoke about the overall importance of moderation. I think that with regard to the obsession of getting infected too, we need to cultivate a certain restraint. Another, even more crucial choice is courage. Yes, we are afraid, but that doesn't mean it has to stay this way. To become more courageous, we can start with the advice of Paul Dubois, an early 20th century psychotherapist who had this to say about his procedure. For a long time I have told my discouraged patients and have repeated to myself, do not let us build a second story to our sorrow by being sorry for our sorrow. Next, we may follow Viktor Frankl, a renowned Austrian psychiatrist, but also a Holocaust survivor, who must have known a thing or two about fear. Frankl writes, when we are no longer capable to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. A possible dramatic change in this direction is, I think, precisely the courage we should muster before the current invisible enemy. And here I would like you to listen very carefully to the exhilarating words of none other than Friedrich Nietzsche. Courage is the best slayer. Courage slays even pity. But pity is the deepest abyss, and as deeply as human beings look into life, so deeply too they look into suffering. But courage is the best slayer, courage that attacks. It slays even death, for it says, was that life? Well then, one more time. Whoever has always spared himself much gets sick in the end from so much coddling. Praised be whatever makes hard. It is necessary to look away from oneself in order to see much. This hardness is needed by every mountain climber. You must climb over yourself, upward, until you have even your stars beneath you. It would be a mistake to find all these exhortations beautiful and nothing more, just because they are authored by men of genius. No, the reason I'm invoking them is that they must be believed and put into practice, insofar as they accurately describe one of the many treasures buried inside you.